You are listening to Revealing Real Estate Podcast, where we dive into getting over your fear of taking risk in real estate and making money while you sleep. I'm Nico Pedizano, your host and real estate guru with over 20 years of experience. It's time to get real. All right, so I'd like to welcome everybody back to the show, Revealing Real Estate, with your host, Nico Pedizano. We are going to have a wonderful guest all the way from Rhode Island today. I want to welcome to the show someone who has had multiple careers within the real estate industry, spanning more than 30 years, and who is passionate about continuing education and helping others grow their real estate investing business to its full potential. A business owner, a mentor, and an author are just a few hats this guest wears. I'd just like to welcome Chris Prefontaine to the show. Chris, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Nick. Glad to be here, buddy. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's listen, this show that I run, we have quite a bit of listeners over here all the way from Toronto. So having, just kind of getting a feel of what's happening all the way back in the United States, just to look at some similarities within the real estate markets itself.
Yeah.
Just want to kind of get a feel and explain to our viewers a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of what you specialize in.
Sure. So I've been at this 30 years, so I'll be super brief. I touched a lot of niches prior to the 2008 crash, building homes, brokerage for 5 years, sold that to Coldwell Banker. So that brought me to about 2000. Leading up to the crash, Nick, I got hammered in 2008 in the debacle in real estate here. When I say hammered, I mean financially, mentally, every way you can. And so when I came out of that, I said, all right, what if I'm even going to go back in the business, because I was just spent mentally, what are the kind of the operating rules going to be? Like, what's the protocol? And it was things like never, ever, ever taking out a bank loan and signing my personal signature on it, because that became a nightmare when the banks came knocking on the door. And then we decided, okay, not only that, but we'll buy everything creatively. We'll buy everything in what I call on terms, which is owner financing, subject to existing financing, or lease purchase. And when I say we have a family company. So after the crash, it was my son and I, and then my son-in-law and daughter joined, and then we got a great team that surrounds us. But then we started in about 13 or 14, started getting requests to coach. That business now has taken off. We do it all over the country and into Canada. So all over North America. We hit Inc. 5000 the last 3 years in a row. So fastest growing companies in the United States. So we are making a little bit of a dent there, and we can talk about why, but that's the kind of the 10,000 foot view.
So when you talk about coaching, are you coaching real estate agents? Are you coaching people just into investing into the market? What type of coaching is it that you guys provide?
It's all for investing. So, but do we have a bunch of agents in our Wicked Smart community? Yeah. Because when I was a broker for years, I wish I knew how to do what we teach now, because basically, to give you an example, as an agent, if I was, my skill sets were there then, any listing I couldn't get, any buyer I couldn't help, anything that didn't fit inside my box, so to speak, I could do creative real estate with. And therefore I would have been the expert, right? I would have been the authority in the area versus just going out and kind of spinning homes every year and doing that as a broker. So I wish I did. So in our community, to answer your question, we have both. It is predominantly made up of people that say, look, I want out of the JOB and I got to learn how to do this. And or they're in real estate, or they're a broker in real estate, and they're used to kind of that, I call it a one paycheck. Yeah. We've trademarked in the US anyway. We've trademarked the 3 payday system, so it's nice.
So what's unique about your system that you guys coach when you come to investing on a lot of things? Like, the conventional investing that we do over here is basically a lot of times with A-lender banks. We buy these properties, we retrofit them. A lot of times I like to use the BRRRR strategy. Where we clean them up, then we refinance them after it's all been completed, and then find tenants, put them inside the market, and continue the process to get more doors. Yeah. What's a little bit different about your strategy and what you guys do?
Couple things. So strategy wise, just pure, what we do in the trenches. So I don't rent ever anymore. I just choose not to. In other words, I don't want tenants. When I put a buyer in a house, they're usually people that need time to either repair credit or increase their down payment because of the rate increase lately, or they had a new job or a new business they need seasoning, for a couple of years. That's who our buyer makeup typically is. So we do that on a rent-to-own basis. do so successfully right there where you are as well. And there's a couple people that have been doing it 30 years near you. So it works great in both markets, and it's a nice mix for any investor. Like if you have the Burr method going on, you can take X amount of the properties that you're going to do that way and turn them into a 3 payday system with the rent to own, and have a nice mix. So the 3 paydays are like this. Payday 1, someone comes into the home, they're a buyer. They just couldn't get a loan yet, so they give you a down payment. Payday 1, that goes to you. Payday 2, difference between what I'm paying on that property to the seller or their underlying mortgage, because it's never in our name personally. And then what I'm charging my rent to own buyer while they're getting financed, while they're getting ready. So that's a little delta there. And then the payday 3 is really cool because it's the markup of the property plus all the principal that accrues for the pay down throughout the term. Terms go anywhere from 1 to 20 years, but typically in the 3 to 6 year range.
So when do you judge the markup of the property? Is this at the beginning or at the end of the transaction taking place with the new buyer?
Yeah, good question. So when we get the home, we determine the price then based on comps, and we pad it a little bit. We can get top dollar because it is rent to own. You're helping people that thought they totally lost hope and couldn't buy a home. Like when rates were 3% and they had good credit and they had down payment, all of a sudden rates are double. Like, oh man, they literally thought they never could buy. So we usually can get top dollar pricing wise, and we do that up front, and they lock that price in up front. So they're behaving like a homeowner. They're either capturing up or down market like a homeowner. The only thing they don't do is they don't have their loan yet. That's all.
I see. So a lot of the stuff that you guys deal with is more of the rent to own process. So the buyer, you find buyers. Is there an actual real good market for it? It used to be common back in the day. I've been in business now 20 years. Never really looked at the concept of the rent to own market itself. I deal with a lot of just sit in the whole properties. I re-leverage the properties, continue to build up on my doors, and more the conventional way of dealing with transactions. Your way. And I always have, I own title on the property. I have the mortgage on the property. I pay the property taxes. Everything on that perspective is just kind of what I'm more to custom of doing. But I do believe that market, especially here in the Toronto market, will be trending towards now back towards the rent to own program. And that's why having you on the show to explain that process, I think it's going to start evolving. And I think it's going to start evolving quick because nowadays, landlords are cash flow negative. Interest rates are through the roof. The Toronto real estate market values are on a decline as interest rates do increase. And I think the risk tolerance right now for landlords become a difficult process where they are scared. They're fearful. They're just sitting liquid with some cash that they really don't have that courage right now to get within the market itself. And we lost a big chunk of that market share. And I think this rent to own strategy, even for landlords that currently own their existing properties themselves, that maybe have properties that are certainly sitting there vacant, having this option or this pivot or creative strategy towards generating new income for these homes is something that's different. And I just kind of want to break it down for those that really don't understand it, because over here in Toronto, there is I know there are some people that are doing it, but it's not heavily advertised. So basically you guys go out there and find a buyer who's looking to own a property. Why would they want to do a rent to own? If they had the downstroke to buy that property, why would they need you?
They're just not bankable yet. So I'll give you a bunch of examples in no priority order. Since COVID, everywhere in the world, there's an onslaught of people starting their own business, right? Like the numbers are astronomical depending on what source you check. I read Michael Dell's book about a year ago, and he stated some crazy high numbers where people are just leaving their JOB and starting their business. Okay. If you do that, I don't know what the seasoning is in Canada. I know in the US, almost every loan, it's 2 years. You can't just go start a business and then, you're bankable. So they're just not financeable yet.
Correct.
That's one example. Another one is, a credit ding from either death, divorce, loss of job, COVID, whatever, but they got credit they got to fix. The credit score got beat up. That's a biggie. Time to save more down because the rates just went up, so they had X amount saved, the rates went through the roof. Now to get that back down, they got to save more. Anyone that can't get a loan today, but is bankable in a year or 2 or 3 with a solid mortgage ready plan, we call it, that's the ideal buyer. And you brought up a cool point. You said, if someone has some rentals, like tired landlords, first of all, a lot of them are coming to us going, yeah, I'm done. Like they just spend. But
Yeah.
if they're not, we had a student come in. I'll give you an example. I think it's always better than hypothetical.
Of course.
So a student, we let the students, we do deals with them, Nick, so that they, it's interactive. They learn with us. That's the best way, I think, instead of leaving them out there cold. One guy came in with a rental property, in his own rental property. We didn't show him how to get it. He was about to turn it over. We give everybody one property where they don't have to revenue share with us. We just help them do it and they learn. Well, we turn that into 83 grand in 3 paydays. Now, disclosure, that's over 3 years, right? It's not like upfront. But he was about to turn it over and just put a rental in there, and it had already gotten beat up once. So it was like he found gold because we just created the 3 payday system, 83 grand over 3 years. And he doesn't have to worry about being a tenant, landlord, rather, because it's not a tenant, it's a buyer.
Correct. They're going to maintain the property themselves. They actually own the house.
Yeah.
All that upkeep that you would have to spend as a normal landlord, it's not going to be on your expense.
Correct.
Which is pretty cool. So I want to understand the coaching process and how things operate from your end. Do you guys just charge a monthly fee to the client to help them and guide them through your strategy and your system? Or are you guys as well take a percentage from the earnings that come in from the units?
Depends what they want to do. So some people come in and just take our course online, and it's not like, a course that gets dated. This is an online living, breathing. We update it as we see fit, like COVID and agreements, everything. Pretty cool. So they go on to the academy and they have that. They go do deals. I can never hear from them again. Or when they're doing deals on their own, they can plug into our free resources. Once a week, we hold resources so you can come and go, hey, I get this deal. I'm kind of lost. Or if they're more aggressive, they'll join what we call the associate program. And the associate program is an upfront, not a monthly. And the associate program puts them in the Wicked Smart community, in the Slack community with everyone, and then assigns them a coach. I still coach the highest level, but we have 5 or 6 certified coaches too. They'll do deals with them and they'll rev share on those deals for a period of time. There's a contract, obviously.
Right. Contract wise, when it comes to contract, are you providing all the contracts when it deals between, buyer and seller?
Yeah, one of the modules, I think it's like model 11, if I'm right, in the Quantum Leap System course, the online course I mentioned. Yep. One of the mods is all our forms, all our checklists, everything. And then we have a separate one for Texas and a separate one for Canada because they slightly differ.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Is there any other things that you guys offer within your company in regards to different type of investments? Because I had a gentleman on the show once, and what he came out with was a strategy, was a co-equity partnership. Have you ever heard of something like that?
Yeah, so they literally take on partners in the LLC, or how do they do it?
Yeah, they take on partners in the LLC. So they set up a term for it. The buyer comes in there with let's say he's only got 5%. The other 15%, they can take on a co-equity partner. They come in as a partner on the deal. If they ever sell the property, they take into profit sharing. The mortgage payment gets done by the actual current buyer on that property as well. And I thought it was a cool strategy. And if people are listening to the podcast, they can go back. It was with 812 Mortgages at the time, and it's pretty new. That just started evolving here in Toronto. And I think that there is a big market from it. And I know that we've done a few transactions and closed a few deals from that program. If somebody wanted to get started with you guys and they wanted to start getting, involved in this, what's the process like? How long does it normally take? And what's the time frame look like?
Yeah. And let me just make a comment on that program that you just said too, before I answer how to start. To answer the question, I like it. I used to do it. My brain now goes to no banks and no asking for money. That's just me. Some people love doing that. Like, hey, get a partner, bring in money, or go to a bank, and that's cool. But I just have not since the crash, and I will not. And at my stage, I just don't want the potential headache, not the headache. Getting started, it depends again how fast or slow they want to get started. But I'll give you a very broad answer. When someone starts with us, the biggest question I get is, how quickly can I do a deal? So I say 2 things. One, please manage expectations, because although we teach the exact same skill sets to everyone, as you know, because you've been at this 20 plus years too, they bring different stuff to the table, like different mindset, different baggage. Like I had baggage right after the crash. So it takes some people 30 days. I have people in the community just did a deal in 32 days. I have others that took 15 months. I just had an event and the kids stood up and said, I just got my first 3 deals, but it took 15 months. Why? We teach them the same thing. It's everything else they got going on, right? So we try to teach the mindset piece as part of the coaching and the systems because of that. So the broad range is 30 days to 15 months. That's been our experience in the community.
When you talk about no banks, can you explain what you mean by that, right? Because
Sure.
most people have to understand that we deal with more conventional A banks, B lenders, or even sometimes
Yep.
private. How does somebody go out there and get financing to close on a transaction without using a bank?
Yeah. So you do one of, I'll go in order that I prefer. Owner financing, or in Canada, the vendor holdback or vendor financing. So the seller becomes your bank. We particularly like a niche within that, and that is free and clear. So I don't know the stat in Canada. I'm sure it's close, but in the United States, a third of the properties are free and clear. It's different markets are different things, but that's a great pond to fish in. I bought this building I'm standing in from an owner who was free and clear. We absolutely target those because they're usually not picky on terms. They'll give you the owner financing. You pay them monthly. What they're picky on is price. And you can pay their price as long as you're getting the right deal. And for us, that's mostly principal pay down, 0% interest. That's a home run because every month you're paying down principal. So that's one way. That's owner financing or vendor holdback. Second way is lease purchase, where you're controlling the property with a lease instrument, a lease agreement, and you're not taking ownership. We have a $10 deposit built into those. So new people love it. A new student goes, $10, I don't have to close on this thing. They control it. No bank involved. What do? Once they find their buyer that you and I discussed, they then start paying the underlying debt that the seller has on the property. It stays in the seller's name until the end of the cash out. And the third one is subject to existing financing. It's existed for decades. It's where someone's more desperate, unlike the free and clear seller. They might be more desperate financially, holding two homes or lost a job. They need fixing now. So they'll sell us their house subject to the existing loan staying in place. That's what sub 2 is for the listener. And that way they're personally guaranteeing the loan still, just that we bought their property. Now, here's what's cool about that. Our rates right now are in the 7s. We're buying, same there.
Yeah.
We're buying property like this week. 2 or 3 students came in with deals. They said, "What's the interest rate on the sub 2 deal?" One of them's a law professor at Penn State. She said 2.3. So we're buying these properties at the old loans at 2.3, 3.1. Like you're not going to see that money, I don't think, for a long time. That interest rate, rather cheap money. Yep. So that's a cool strategy.
Enjoying this episode? Subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment down below to let us know what you want to learn next. Make sure you're following our Instagram and TikTok to stay up to date on our new episodes every Friday.
Yeah. So what you could find within this market, where I can understand it, is that there's difficulty in sellers wanting getting their properties unloaded. Sometimes they're in a situation where they own a secondary property that they've moved into already, and they have some equity built up inside this home where they really are not in a situation where they need to sell. And I'm as a real estate agent here in Toronto, there's quite a few of them that we're starting to see on the market.
Yeah.
Approaching that seller, do they have to have a certain amount of equity that's built inside that home for this to work, where you can then take over that property of them? Or is it, because if they have a high mortgage on it, they're going to need, that that payment could be pretty big depending on what the interest rate will be.
I agree.
If they don't have a very small mortgage on it or a lot of equity within inside that home, how does that get structured out?
Great question, because every deal is different. Again, some examples. So I got a call from one of my coaches in California. Say, "Hey, Chris, brand new student has this deal, doesn't know what to do." Long story short, the guy's like 12 months in arrears, has an astronomical relative to his price mortgage payment every month. I think it's like $3,700. This house was like $600,000 house. So making up the arrears for that particular seller and trying to take on that monthly payment and get that covered by a rent-own, I didn't see an easy path to it. And it wasn't like the property had a bunch of equity that I could take the risk and say, well, it's okay, I'm getting all this equity. The guy was maxed out. So that doesn't work. On the other hand, we had one come forward, similar situation, divorced couple, one's on the deed, one's on the mortgage. They're not getting along. They're only behind $4,100. Their mortgage payment every month, super, super low, like 2.7% interest. So we made up the arrears, put a buyer in that home, and started making the payment. No brainer. There was a little equity there. But if we're buying a sub 2, basically for free, and getting all the principal pay down throughout the term, you got to look at the deal as a whole, all 3 paydays. That's why I said every deal is a little different. If the math works. The math didn't work on that one, that just wouldn't flow, right? Now I don't care how many paydays you get.
Yeah, I got you. So the question is now, are you guys do you guys use realtors? You're not offended in any way. Yeah, so I want to let you
No,
know up
I
front.
was one for 5 years, right? I told you that. So we do on if we have to spin out of a property, we have like in each state where we are, we have a couple great ones who will give them a house. If say a buyer defaults and we go, hey, we just want to sell this one, we'll always go through a realtor and we price it super aggressive. So they're always psyched because we just lower it, price it, get a bidding war and get rid of it.
Right.
Then they'll send us deals, Nick. This is an interesting one. So there are some realtors that just don't want to learn. There's some in our community. But there's others that go, you know what? I'll go in my lane. If I get something that doesn't fit, or if I get something that's over leveraged, or they don't want to pay me, or it expires, I'll give it to you guys. And we get a half a dozen of those from one realtor. Now he knows what we make off them. They're on YouTube. We publicize them, right? They're 50, 80, 100 grand, sometimes 200. But he doesn't want to do it. He just takes his percentage referral from us. So it's a nice little relationship. Agents are great with this stuff because they can go to a seller and say, hey, it didn't work, but here's an option. I have some investor partners. Boom. It's a nice fit.
Yeah, no, it's a nice fit for sure. So how do you find the buyers for it, right? Because I look at it, and the only thing that's really skeptical within my mind is trying to find somebody who's willing to do a lease to own. And
Yeah.
finding that buyer, to me, sometimes I fear is a little bit more difficult than the conventional putting it on MLS, finding renters that you're gonna find by like over here in Toronto, we're in multiple offers. You put up a property up for rent right now, but the amount of immigration that we're importing within the country itself, people are just flocking to get these things and they're overpaying on them, right? And the rental market's pretty big and it's huge. How do you find somebody specifically who wants to take over the rental home program?
So picture this, and I'll tell you how we do it now automated, because it never used to be automated. It used to be us manually. But picture the amount of people that can't today qualify. And all you got to do is like ask a top mortgage broker, and you might know the answer. One in our community told me, he's been at this like 20 something years. And he said, Chris, right now, 17 to 20% tops of my applicants are getting qualified. That means 80 to 83 are not. Now, they're not all good rent-to-own clients, but out of 80 to 83, I got a batch in there that are probably super strong and just need time, whatever that percentage is. But that's a big pool of buyers compared to conventional buyers. Even when rates were real low, you still had that big pool, but now it's pretty high where they can't qualify. As far as getting it out there, we used to post to like Craigslist and Rent Links and do it all manually, my son and I, when we started. Well, now as a service, Prosperity it's called, but they'll once an investor gets the property, they'll put it out in their marketing channels. It hits like 32 portals, probably more. The rents were like 6 times much more than we could ever do ourselves. We tracked it, and then we gave them all our properties. Well, what's better is once they get the buyer and we secure the buyer and we qualify them, they then collect. They're like an escrow company. They'll collect the rent, the rent-to-own payment every month. They'll pay the underlying debt, and they'll drop the difference in our account. It's all automated. So we can go off and do what we're best at. And so that's really cool. That came about 2 years ago.
Yeah, but how would somebody do that now? Somebody who's in Toronto, Canada, listening to the show, because most of our listeners and viewers that watch our show and listen to it are from here, Toronto, Canada. So if they needed to go and start working on trying to get a property, to get the VTB already set up with the seller, and now they need to find that buyer tenant to move inside that property, how would they go through the process here in Canada?
It's all online. So if that service doesn't go to Canada, it may, but let's assume it doesn't for the discussion. Then they would post like I did for the last 8 years before that, which was posting on the local rental and rent-own sites. It's all rent sites, and we put in the language of how to do it for rent-to-own, and that's who we're grabbing.
I don't see why you wouldn't be able to put it and use a realtor as well to put it on the MLS and have that property listed as a rent-to-own.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Absolutely can. So we'll do like a list only sometimes where there's no fee, it's just a service fee, and get it more exposure, especially if it's high end.
Yeah. Even if it's a small fee, sometimes you're paying that half month, 1 month rent up front. If somebody wanted to get started, I believe you Wicked Smart is your company.
Yeah, so we put a book link together for your tribe specifically. It is wickedsmartbooks.com/Nick, and then the numeric number 1, just Nick 1.
Yeah.
And then get that for free. And it's not one of those free offers that say, free, and then you put your credit card in for shipping. We'll ship it. Secondly, just go to smartrealestatecoach.com. I'm big on free, Nick. We have workshops that are free every Thursday. We have weekly sit downs. We call them Wicked Smart sit downs. That's all free. Because I'd rather have someone look at this, realtor or not, and go, all right, this is something I want to pursue, and then dig deeper. Or, hey, not for me. Thanks for sharing all that free stuff. And that's fine too. Like our YouTube channel has, I don't know what it's up to now. It's over 200, maybe it's 250 deals that we whiteboard and show you the 3 paydays and show you how it works. So if that gets you going, you go, yeah, I can see how that would fit into my business and not leave a bunch of money on the table. I remember the days when I had 100 homes a year before I sold to Coldwell Banker. Every January, I remember seriously being like depressed, going, I got to do 100 homes again to get that income. It was just like a treadmill. So I think to integrate this would be cool for anyone.
Yeah, no, it sounds really cool. I used to hear about it sometime within the past when I first started out in the business. Then it kind of faded its way out. I think it's a creative strategy, especially within these markets right now, where people need to diversify. They need to pivot. They need to make change. They need to really kind of find different ways to start generating that income. I've been dealing with a lot of investors that own quite a bit of doors, and they were looking at the possibility of Airbnb their homes to generate that income, just because the amount of rent that they were going to see on their property didn't cover the amount of mortgage payments that they were going to be able to make. And that was just one way of them pivoting. But now we're finding within the market here in Toronto that there's an oversaturated amount of Airbnbs. So a lot of this show that I try to do is provide free information to help people and educate people, maybe in some difficult times or struggling right now, to find different ways and approach this real estate game by not just relinquishing their properties. Because I'm a big believer in never selling homes myself. Personally. I'm in the real estate game for quite some time, doing renovations, building houses. I transact daily. I have a big team over here within Toronto, that if people were looking to sell their home or buy another house, we help them through the entire process. So there's a lot of hats that I wear as well. This to me is something that I may be, interested in. I am doing some more research on it. I am investigating. I'd be excited to get that book just to kind of, read on it a little bit more. But, I feel like I'm more of a savvy investor. And I think the difficult process for me within my mind, and maybe somebody who's in my situation right now, would be looking at, well, I may not need the coaching. I understand the scripting. I understand how to, put a deal together. What I probably would be looking for right now is more of the contract, understanding how the contract is worded. What type of how is the agreement taking place between buyer and seller. Those are the more particular things that I'll be looking for. That's the information that you say that I would be able to find just online.
Yep, you can get it online, and I would hook you up. We'll talk offline later, but I hook you up with a gentleman who's been to my last 3 events. He's in Quebec, and he drives down to each event, and he investigated this 16 different ways. He's a broker. He's a broker owner. So you guys, I'd connect you two as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you ever host any events here in Toronto?
No, I do them all right here. It's just my preference. So everybody comes here. So we do them in March and September. I, as a fellow podcaster, I would get you guys tickets, and however many you wanted, I'd just get you all free tickets and come see us. It'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd like to check that out. Maybe I'll bring my team with me too, right? Because it's something that they can now start educating to their clients as well.
For sure.
So right now you talked about beginning of the show, and I just want to kind of pick your brain on this. You don't hold on to any properties. You once the property gets, you put a buyer inside that property, they run on the rent to own program. You are on title, correct? You are just not on the mortgage, I'm assuming.
Correct. We're in title on the vendor or on the financing and on the sub-2s. On the lease purchase, we're not on title ever. As far as holding, this is a good question. A lot of people misunderstand this. So when someone's new, they usually want to get the cash flow going and the 3 paydays going. So they are going to let those cash out in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's the typical program. I take to the next level with someone once they get 5 or 8 properties, because I call it wealth stacking, because now you can get creative yet again with a seller and maybe keep that property. So as a family company, because we've been at it so long, we have a portfolio we keep, just like you, while we do the ones that we want to cash out. And that's just by choice. We figure out the cash flow, we figure out what we want to keep. So there's some properties that, my grandkids will have. We will never cash out. And that's just pointedly as you go through the process. Like if you own a property subject to the existing financing, there's no time bomb ticking. You don't have to cash that out. Unlike a term on owner financing, like my building here, I had a 20-year balloon that was structured. Okay, so there's no clock ticking really. Others are 5 years, and then you plan accordingly. So yeah, we definitely stay in some by choice.
That's good to know. Anything else in the business that you do back home? Do you do any renovations type of things, flips?
My wife and I always do. Like I got two of my own homes going right now, one in two different states. We always have something going together, my wife and I, and that's all I used to do, Nick. I used to do raise the roof projects. My wife did. We did condominium conversions, new construction, hundreds of homes. So I like playing with that. I just don't like it as my main business model. We always have fun, and we have one or two in the works always.
What's the real estate market there back in Rhode Island?
It's like, it's closer to the city like you, stuff's starting to sink, but we're still getting multiple offers, like towards Boston, let's say, right? That would be comparative. But in other markets, and because we're like a microcosm of society, our community, it's cool. I get to hear the different markets. So in pockets, it's starting to go backwards again. And as such, you're getting all the expired listings going to the roof compared to during COVID, nothing expired practically. So it's starting to soften. Yeah. What's cool about creative though is I said this in 13 when everybody said you're crazy to buy, Chris, you just went through the crash. Fact is, if you know creative, you're like an engineer. I don't care if the market's going up, down, or sideways. It's how you structure the deal, and it's what pond you're fishing in to find the deals. But you can always do real estate if you understand creative. And what's cool about it is once you learn it, whether you ever talk to me again, once the listeners learn it, you got a skill set for life. You just put more things in your toolbox. That's all you're doing, especially as an agent. You become the authority where other agents go in there. They're not going to be able to compete with you, like not even a prayer, because you have all these options for your seller morally and ethically. Right? They're not just financial.
So how long does it normally take for somebody to take full possession of the property on your rental home program? Because if I get a buyer inside there, what's the term look like between there? Because you're doing a VTB with the seller direct. You get the mortgage directly with the seller. The buyer comes in there, he gives you the downstroke. This is from my understanding. On the average, downstroke is what, 5-10% that they're normally coming up with?
We'd like to get them to 10. It's even easier in Canada because you guys are used to the higher down payments, which I loved when I figured that out a few years ago. So yeah, we like to get them. Sometimes it's up front and sometimes it's over time, which is nice because it vests them in the home and gives you more cash flow. But 7 to 10. If it's going to be a jumbo loan in the US, we want to get them eventually to 20%. Because for us, they would need that. You don't want to send them up to win, right? If you say you only need 5% and then they get to the loan, they got 20, you're going to send them up to fail. So we just want to be careful with what loan they're going towards.
So you spread out that their down payment. So this could be spread out within a course of 24 months. Let's just say.
Yeah, typically, say we have a term with the seller of 4 years. We're going to look for someone as a buyer that can qualify, be mortgage ready, we call it, within 18 to 24, so that we have room for hiccups, right? Life happens. They run a credit card out, they buy an extra car, whatever. They need extra time. So we want to make that fit inside the seller term so we don't mess anyone up.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Is there anything, Chris, that you want to add on to before we end off the show, just to kind of get people to understand that there is a marketplace for it? Because the reason why I'm asking you that question, and I'm going to get to this, is that you don't realize that there is a market until you're in the market. That makes sense. And I was I think about 8 years back, I started getting, as a real estate agent, started to realize about wholesaling. And there was a marketplace of people that didn't want to get their house on the market, whether they're going through a divorce, they're distressed, they financially can't afford their homes. Right. There are situations out there where people are in a distressed situation, or they just want out of their property. They're hoarders. They don't want to spend the time to clean up the property. Right. I didn't realize how big that market was until I got into that market.
I agree.
I'm starting to realize that there's such a huge market that you are in right now when it comes to the rental home, especially today, that people may think, oh, this is way too difficult. And I know how I'm just trying to get into the minds of our listeners and what they're going to be thinking. This is very too difficult right now to get into this market. We're not going to be able to find these type of buyers or these type of sellers. How easy is it for you guys right now?
I'll never say easy, right? But I will say simple. There's a plethora of sellers, either expired or for rent by owners that are tied, for sale by owners that are tied. It doesn't matter. Landlords, there's a plethora of sellers. The buyer piece is even easier, but there's a plethora of sellers that are out there. So you'll never have an issue with that. We show you how to lead gen. That's all it is, just like your business, right? We show you how to do that. So and again, I don't get the market's going up or down, but right now happens to be a really good time because people are going, I need help. I need a guide here. This is changing for me.
What would be the average cost for somebody to want to have to invest to start up?
Average what?
Cost wise, and what's the associated
Cost.
expenses to this, right? Because you're gonna have to do some lead gen. I'm assuming that to find sellers that want to relinquish or do a VTB, you're gonna have to maybe use Google. There's gonna be some expenditure there.
There's different lead
different
sources.
avenues.
We tell people this. To get you to about a deal a month, and keep in mind, average rate paydays ranges from like 45 grand to 250 grand per deal. So these aren't small deals. You don't need to go out and do 50 deals, right?
Right.
So to get you to one deal a month, you're going to have an overhead somewhere between $560 and $1,000, which is relatively very, very small. And that will count like a virtual assistant, your lead gen, and your software. So it's not expensive start. Now, you'll get to the point after your first 5 or 6 deals where if you want to scale it, now you got team things to think about, and we help you with that. But it's fairly inexpensive relative to any business I've ever done.
You know, I can't wait to get your book. I like to learn a little bit more about it. Definitely, if I get the opportunity to come down to Rhode Island and come to one of your conferences, I would definitely take you up on that. Something I'm going to look to start getting creative over here in Toronto and see if I can try to get into that market as well and diversify and just add something to my stock of hats that I currently wear as well.
I know we'll set you up. I'll hit the team when we're off air here, and I really appreciate the chat and opening things up. And I'd love to be back in Toronto more aggressively. I was there for years coaching realtors.
That's cool, Chris. You've been awesome. It's a pleasure to have you on. Look forward to further conversations with you.
Thanks, buddy. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. All the best, man.
Looking to buy or sell? Call a team you can trust. Don't believe me? Our Google reviews say it all. Put us on your lawn, your house will be gone. TheOPteam.com.